Sir Henry had no need of mosquito nets or any of that kind of nonsense. His very breath took care of that nuisance. But in that noisome and restless doze, he experienced the first of many completely asexual dreams concerning Florrie, and more surprisingly even, of old Scrotum. He awoke in a speckled sweat, thinking of Rawlinson End. Several months without a letter, or even a crateful of cheer from home, Sir Henry, a man of profound compassion and forgivefulness, tacked a piece of airmail paper to the glistening back of his toilet-bearer and directed him to kneel in the desk position. Sadly, the wretched heat and filthy foreign conditions Henry had endured in the African veldt had blunted and dried up his Parker fountain pen. He was forced to write in blood. It was not, of course, his own, and he found, to his great invention and pleasure, just what a grand inkwell could be improvised from a human ear. Again, it was not his own. His letter was as follows, and it perhaps illuminates a more emotional and unexpected side of Sir Henry Rawlinson.
My dearest Florrie, it's a bit of a bloody pickle out here. Of course, I have killed a lot of things, but that's the good side. I haven't seen a white man since the last time I shaved. Knowing of my deep love for you, would you immediately send me 3 crates of brandy, several hundred roll mops, and a mouth organ? What these sods need is a good nightly rendering of Jollity Farm. Bloody drums and banjos all night long. If I shout at them, they think I'm singing the sodding chorus, and if I shoot one or two, the whole lot of them turn resentful. Ridiculous. Pity they don't have a Butlins out here. A couple of years in there would knock some sense into them. I would naturally prefer to have my tuba. Bound to get damaged in transit. Some wog had turned it into a cannon. Looking forward to the brandy. Yours, Henry.
To waltz without pain is sweet, to tango with Negroes is suave, but celebrate Christmas without your rhyme is a harder thing to carve. Gossamer had a rather specialized business in wigs. Send only a portion of hair from any hairy portion of the body, and the same will be returned to yourself in the form of a perfectly matching wig. This will fool all the girls. Our wigs come in complete with a choice of sterilized carpet tacks or the new waterproof wood glues. For some reason beyond his comprehension, he was arraigned, arrested, and had to flee, not only from South Africa, but from his whole family and happy customers. Was good for the whole bald human race. And then I sure had to race for the border, leaving behind me wife, 17 kids, and a darn good business. In many aspects, Gossamer was very much like Henry. It was only that, as yet, in the pursuit of finance, Henry had not so far had need to scalp anybody. When Gossamer first lifted the ponderous porcelain weight of Henry's throne onto his head, he was the proudest man on the expedition. The field toilet was as huge as an elephant's foot. In Durban, Gosomusa had polished the brass and mahogany seat to a fine gloss that matched his own cheeks. But now the sun had robbed the wood of its sheen, and the acid drops of vultures greened the metal. He remembered the words of Baba Sir Henry the Windbreaker, the breaker of winds, that he, Gosomusa, was the bearer after the brandy bearer and the gun.
The most vital piece for gentlemen's equipment in all of Africa.
Most of the boys were Afrikaans speaking, as were the shield bearers, the privy seal, who stood in a square about the throne when Henry did what he had to do. He called them the inner truth. Whilst polishing the mahogany and brass of Sir Henry's feeble toilet, Gosomusa had time to ponder on this.
It is not true that the shortest line is always straight.
Gosomusa knew this now to be true, from the many times he'd held the porcelain in front of his swaying master. The Führer of Rawlinson End had a bladder like a zeppelin, but an aim like the rapid escape of a serpent. As consequence, Gosomusa's hair was quite straight, and his skin so bleached, were it not for his nostrils, he could pass for a German tourist. When white gloss-painted number 7 reported that the Induna of what was undoubtedly a very large impi had been surveying the expedition for several days, Henry demanded to know what were the size of the thing's horns, since he'd never heard of the animal. Being told that the horns of the Zulu impi were very large indeed, Henry declared he would
Bag the bugger in the morning and use it as a hat stand.
It was in light of this unfortunate misunderstanding, an impi being a highly trained Zulu regiment of ferocious endeavour and initiative, that in the light of that mid-African morning, Henry, after several great gulps of rum, found himself awake outside his tent on the aloe-scented hills, quite alone, save for the ever-faithful and weeping Ubura. The camp deserted, and the porters gone.
I suppose they've taken all the wire wool,
grumped Henry, feeling some movement of mackerel in his unmentionable and heavily corseted regions. They had.
Probably to get the white gloss paint off. God damn it, I suppose I'll have to use bog paper. They haven't nicked it.
They had.
And all the emergency terps. Oh, Lord of trousers,
grumped Henry.
You don't find cactus in the dark incontinent, do you?
Ubura shook his head.
Then you'd better find me a haystack or a thatched roof. And damn quick. What'll they bugger off for anyway?
We are in the land of the terrible King Ndidis. The boys were frightened when he thought of shooting the impi, and they ran away.
I'll shoot any damn thing I like. And put it over the mantelpiece,
growled Henry.
God's teeth. I'm paying them 2 English shillings a month, and all the berries they can find, and the ingrate sods piss off,
Henry stared at the scattered boxes and moribund fires of what was left of his safari.
And to what do I owe your loyalty? He bellowed.
Ubura shuddered and shrugged.
You avaricious toad,
yelped Sir Henry.
2 bob a month when you're anybody's.
Sir Henry took stock of the situation. He had a can of corned beef, his shotgun, half a crate, a tin of talcum powder, and a large Christmas unwanted bag of bath salts. It was this last glittering, iridescent item that gave him the great wheeze. It was to prove a mistake.
Lead me to this terrible Ndidi, you squid.
Ubura rolled his eyes like dice and came up with an unlucky 13. Luck was not a lady that morning, more like a whore with a heart of bath salts. Ndidi, Bass?
Yes, indeed, Ndidi,
roared Henry, now determined on his course. It was to prove a great education. With a mighty wealth of air and gas, Sir Henry, in tattered magnificence, entered the Kraal of Ndidi. And just before falling over in supposed obeisance, he farted hugely, and jeering women were stunned in their avanu relation, and battle-scarred warriors held their noses. The tyrant Ndidi was most impressed with his behaviour, and pursuant to a hurried discussion with his ministers, divined that Henry's smell and its effect were an augury of power and mystic strength.
I see you, white man, and I see you again, said Ndidi, suspiciously.
He says he sees you, Sir Henry Baba, interpreted Ubura. A greeting, sir.
Well, good to hear it. At least the fat shit won't want to steal my monocle. Why is he grunting and making all those damn clicking noises,
It is from the tongue of the Hottentots, now a part of the Zulu language. The great King Ndidi does not speak English, Baba.
Good grief. This is a part of the empire, isn't it? Well, I'm buggered.
Ubura delivered a lengthy, overlaudatory paean to the bored black monarch.
What are you going on about? Just tell the bugger howdy doody and whatnot, and will he kindly get off his bum and fetch me a large one? Where's the ruddy drinks cabinet anywhere?
Henry raised the seat of his field toilet and sat down heavily. He mopped his sun-raspberry brow impatiently. Ndidi flicked his wildebeest fly switch imperiously, and Ubura stopped in mid-praise. Ndidi glowered a cold appraisal of Henry and then stared at the mahogany and porcelain throne. He grunted, knitting his brows and seaming the whole of his ugly head. He raised his hand.
I welcome this strange white King Henry.
As one sovereign to another, he regally indicated to Henry one of the vast clay pots of royal beer at the base of his dirt mound. Henry grumbled and rose blinking to his feet, staggered forward, peered inside, and frowned terribly. He recoiled.
Listen, you sweaty clod. If I'd have wanted to piss, I was already settled in the perfect position.
Not understanding, indeed he considered this an after you and a kingly gesture of courtesy. A minister filled a goblet with foaming amber fluid. The Black King drained it mightily. He remarked. Udibi page boy wiped Ndidi's lips with his young head. It is the royal beer, Baba, murmured Ubura with awe. Stronger even than your own infamous grouse whiskey. The King Ndidi invites the King Henry.
King Henry? Well, I suppose it's understandable.
Invites you to drink with him.
Stronger than the old infamous, huh?
As Henry quizzed this impossibility, the king himself stooped to fill another goblet. Said Henry, rudely brushing him aside. Ndidi froze in terrible unbelief, and 20,000 spears stuttered minatory on ox-hide shields. Kneeling before the huge clay pot, Henry clasped it as though it were a woman and lifted it to his mouth. There was a silence. The pot contained at least 4 quarts of potent brew. Henry swallowed the lot, pausing only 3 times for breath. There was a silence. Then Ndidi, his great belly quivering, bellowed his delight. Birth, Sir Henry, and with a wave, and cheers, suppose. 20,000 stamping, cheering warriors erupted in cheers from the giant crowd. King Ndidi says he will present you with that kaross. It is a great honor, Baba, whispered Ubura.
A ruddy cross?
Choked Henry.
I know I'm a saintly man, but I'm not the son of God's teeth. And what next? Mount Calvary, Golgotha, the place of the ruddy skulls? Does he think I walked over the lakes? Blasted, I'm not even a bloody Jew boy. Tell him that, the silly sod.
Ubura informed the king that Henry was delighted with his generosity and that the great white king had a gift for the all-powerful Ndidi. Maybe it would be the corned beef. Ndidi signaled, and an aged Induna emerged from a large hut bearing a beautiful cloak of leopard skin. Ndidi rose and solemnly placed it about Henry's shoulders.
Well, at least it'll keep the chill out on the way to my crucifixion. Kairos, intoned Ndidi. Not if I can help it, you bugger.
Henry gave a great eye-rolling shrug of El Greco martyrdom.
Tell this sooty Pontius pirate that I'm going to give him some priceless jewels.
Ubura looked very puzzled, but did as he was told. Then, to his utter horror, Henry, with a slight and dignified bow, reached into the field toilet, grunted, and placed in Ndidi's enormous hands the bag of bath salts. Henry screwed his monocle into his left eye, even more astonishingly gross than sweating Ndidi. Then, taking one pinky crystal from the spilling bag, he held it to the light. The sun glanced off King Henry's magic eye, and the bath salt danced in reflected glare. Groaned and entranced Sir Henry, shaking his head like a great connoisseur. So very sorry to see it pass from the family. With a resigned sigh, he plumped back on the throne, quite overcome. Indeed, he growled with pleasure, and horrid noises of feigned expertise and pawnbroker approval. Henry was offered beer, which he accepted with a reluctance bordering on the good manners of a gannet. Also, a huge wooden platter of solids. It was meat of some kind. At the sight of this food,
Not Roman Catholics, I trust. I'd hate to have garlic on my breath. Woof!
Henry whirfed. He whirfed and ejected a solid shout that convinced the assembled warriors and the king Ndidi that this strange white man could speak in rainbows. At home, Henry always said "grouse" before a meal. This here was clearly impossible and a breach of courtesy. "Grease," he said, largely, and winked.
Hell, he sure ain't squinting,
said Ndidi sagely. At the risk of castration or a clubbing, Ndidi's generals could only agree. Once more on his feet, a condition Henry equated with only the middle classes, he staggered towards the king. Ndidi wore a great blue kaross about his naked shoulders and gigantic belly. About his head was a leather ring. "Isikuku," said Ndidi, pointing to his head ring and pointing out his manhood.
Is he? Belfed Henry. And does he play clarinet? Must say I hate the circus myself.
Ndidi, part educated and part fed on missionaries, rose in misunderstanding. 1,000 gleaming, angry spears were poised at the Führer of Rawlinson End. Ndidis stabbed pointedly at his cloak.
Karas is mantle of the king,
he intoned.
This is Blaubach. None left now. All shot out. Just what is left on my body. It lives. It's probably crawling, said Henry. Mind you, a good going out with Terps.
Ndidis seemed confused for a moment, then ordered 2 of his ministers to be buried up to their necks in ant-hills. Henry declared Ndidi
a ruddy good egg.
Henry downed the second of the royal pots of beer and collapsed on the throne.
You catch my meaning? He mumbled.
Ndidi caught nothing and supervised the clubbing of 9 of his wives. Burst Henry through a fog of unseeing.
Never let him get on top of you. That's the sure sign of a pervert.
The gorgeous maidens advanced on the assembled ranks of warriors. If one of them fellas gets erect, he's sure got to get the clubbing coming. Henry was very fond of clubs. At least it got him away from home. And when he was in London, he usually stayed at the Urethrium.
Oh, they all look very erect to me. Stick a bearskin on them. Oh, they all in bearskin. But they might make fine guardsmen. Erect?
Said Ndidi. And he gave a mimetic sign to his executioners. It was thus that Henry, in all ignorance, was largely responsible for the end of the Zulu nation. Noting the skull-breaking advances of the executioners, Henry had risen to protest.
Damn it! I played rugby at Dr. Arnold's. It was definitely against the rules to raise the clubs above the shoulder or to wear shorts above the knee. I'd say this is all without discipline.
Ubura interpreted this to Ndidi, who, having paraded his herds of pure white cattle before this new and strange king, Sir Henry, felt a twinge of shame. To this end, he ordered another 50 warriors executed.
Dear God,
said Henry.
Just like Scotland.
The terrible King Ndidi decided that his audience with this amazing King Henry had really been too exhausting, and he needed just a little time in his harem. His 900 wives would soothe him. To show his respect, he offered the now very drunk Henry the finest hut in the royal inner Kraal, after his own. Ndidi was helped to his flat bare feet, and he pointed with his switch to a magnificent round thatched building decorated with cowrie shells. Behind Ndidi, his chief minister bared his gold teeth in anger. It was his hut.
Oh, so that's where it is. I was wondering. Oh, thank God, I'm nearly bloody bursting.
Before Ubura had time to explain, Henry was barging his way through gaping indunas, witch doctors and ministers, and before he'd even stooped to enter the beautiful beehive hut, he'd already unbuttoned his shorts. When Henry debouched, cursing and burping and wiping his hands down the side of his shorts, it was soft, sudden sable dusk. The inner Kraal was almost deserted, only Ubura polishing Henry's throne, 9 gigantic pure white bulls, and also a man with gold teeth who stared with calm hatred at Sir Henry. Behind the high stockaded harem was only quiet, and from the hut of the great wife of Ndidi, nothing but a dreadful snoring. Before the entrance to this great hut stood motionless 4 heavily muscled royal executioners, each with a short stabbing spear, club, and axe. Each stood behind their shields, and each wore the head ring of great warriors. Having been awarded the head ring meant that they were now fit to marry, have children, and settle in their own kraals. That these splendid men chose to remain as bodyguard to their king demonstrated a fierce and marvelous loyalty. Only Ubura understood the niceties of this sacrifice.
Do you know they don't have any windows in that bloody place? Yes, you. I like my privacy in these matters as much as any gentleman, but bugger me, I had to crawl around on my hands and knees in the ruddy dark looking for the pan.
Ubura shook his head sadly.
Well, I found it all righty. Fact is, I found 3 of them. But can you believe this? They were all full. Full? They were bloody brimming. I had to feel my way to my feet and do it up the wall. No wonder these wallers catch odd diseases and carry fly swishers. Downright revolting. Don't clean their bogs out.
They were not pans, Baba Henry, sir, fluted Ubura. They were pots of the royal beer, ordered there by his great majesty for your pleasure.
What? Does he think I drink in lavatories? Dear Lord, hospitality? And just where does his gracious majesty think I'm going to bunk down? The blasted bulls?
Ubura could only point back to the hut.
What? Sleep in the lavatory too? Ear, nose and throat. I'm getting out of this. I'm getting out of this stinking hole before lighting up time.
Cock-a-doodle-1, says the chicken in his run. Cock-a-doodle-2, says the monkey in the zoo. Cock-a-doodle-3 says you can come and look at me. But Cock-a-doodle-4 says the bars are off the door. Then Cock-a-doodle-5 says, I'll eat you all.